This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Bells toll at the Vatican this morning, marking the death of Pope Francis. He was 88 years old. Francis was the world's first Latin American pope. As leader of the Roman Catholic Church, he called for empathy and care for the world's poor and marginalized. Megan Williams has more from the Vatican.
Pope Francis has been known as the progressive pope, prioritizing social justice over strict doctrinal enforcement, with a strong focus on migrants, prisoners, and the poor. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires in 1936, Francis was elected Catholic leader in 2013, after Pope Benedict XIII became the first pope in centuries to step down. A path Pope Francis is now following. His papacy has been defined by groundbreaking milestones. He was the first pope from the Western Hemisphere and the Global South, the first from the Jesuit order, and the first to take the name Francis. Francis made history when he traveled to Canada in 2022 on what he called a penitential tour, apologizing to Indigenous peoples for the, quote, deplorable conduct of some members of the Catholic Church in the residential school system. He said that system had carried out a genocide, but stopped short of saying the Church itself was responsible. Environmental stewardship has been central to his papacy, with sharp critiques of the fossil fuel industry and its toll on the planet and the poor. Francis responded to calls for zero tolerance for clergy's sex abuse of children, though critics say he's fallen short, and the Pope himself has admitted to serious errors in judgment. He's welcomed 2S LGBTQ+ people into the Church. He's also the first pope to appoint women to top Vatican positions and allow them to vote in global church gatherings. Still, he has firmly opposed women entering the priesthood, with the all-male College of Cardinals now preparing to vote for the next male leader of the Roman Catholic Church. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
As Megan mentioned, it was just 3 years ago Pope Francis was in Canada. He expressed deep sorrow for harm suffered at residential schools and asked forgiveness for church members' cooperation with government policies of assimilation. For more, let's go to the CBC's Juanita Taylor. She's in Calgary this morning. And Juanita, that tour is part of Pope Francis's legacy, but it was not his only effort at reconciliation.
That's right. In March of 2022, a delegation of Indigenous people traveled to Rome by invitation from Pope Francis. Over a number of days, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leaders met privately with Pope Francis at the Vatican. And some of those leaders told us how they felt a sense of renewed reconciliation after sharing their experiences of attending residential schools in Canada. And on their last day, before an audience of about 200 people, including bishops, the Indigenous delegates, and their supporters, Pope Francis offered a powerful message only a few saw coming. He said that he felt sorry and shame for what had happened at residential schools, acknowledging the damage and indignity visited upon Indigenous children by some members of the Church, though he stopped short of saying the Church itself was responsible.
Remind us, how did Inuit react when the Pope came to Iqaluit for his apology tour?
Well, leaders in Iqaluit called this visit historic, where Pope Francis spent only a few hours in the Nunavut capital. Thousands of people stood outside to see and hear the Pope speak, more specifically say sorry. And he said sorry in Inuktitut. Again, that time, some felt the apology fell short because Pope Francis didn't apologize for the Church's role in abusing children at residential schools. But before the event outside, over 100 people got to meet privately with Francis inside a school in Iqaluit, including Tanya Tungelik. She's the daughter of the late Marius Tungelik. Her father was one of the first Inuit to lay charges against retired Catholic priest Johannes Revor, who worked as a priest in Nunavut in the 1960s and 70s. And Tungelik asked Pope Francis to help pressure France to extradite Revor back to Canada to face charges of sexual assault. But Pope Francis never did, and Rip Ward died at the age of 93 in April of 2024.
Thank you so much, Juanita.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Juanita Taylor reporting from Calgary. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is offering his condolences on the passing of Pope Francis. He says the Pope's humility, compassion, and steadfast faith had a profound impact on millions of Canadians. We are expecting to hear from Liberal leader Mark Carney next hour. Carney is a practicing Catholic. Also on the campaign trail, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is spending most of the day on Vancouver Island. And Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet is campaigning in Quebec City. He appeared on the popular Quebec talk show Tout le monde en parle again last night. And as Rafi Boudjikanian tells us, Blanchet boldly predicted Mark Carney will be Prime Minister.
Voici le chef du Bloc québécois, Yves-François Blanchet.
Tout le monde en parle is an institution in Quebec. Up to 1 million viewers a week tune into the popular Radio-Canada talk show. An audience Bloc québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet is still hoping to capture.
Monsieur Carney va être premier ministre, c'est assez clair.
Even as he tells them it's pretty clear Liberal Mark Carney, his chief rival in the vote-rich province, will end up Prime Minister. As predictions go, it's a lot less bold than the one Blanchet made at the start of the 2021 campaign, that he would send 40 MPs to Parliament, more than half the number of seats available in this province. But Blanchet also has another forecast.
On a des différences profondes, là.
Saying he and Carney have profound differences, that Carney can't adequately represent Quebec's interests in a U.S. trade war without the Bloc to keep him in check. Blanchet boasted Carney gave him his phone number earlier this week, keen to show he's still influential. But polls suggest the Bloc could lose up to 10 seats in this election. Blanchet saying he could still be efficient with fewer MPs, but hopes to make a couple of gains with one last prediction.
Oh mon Dieu. Ça risque pas d'être un discours de démission.
He very much doubts he will resign after election night. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Quebec City.
Today is the last day advance polls are open. Elections Canada says 2 million people have already voted on Friday alone. These voters cast their ballots this weekend at Ottawa City Hall.
It's our right and our responsibility to participate in this process.
It's a long weekend, so it's, beautiful weather. It was nice to just wander down here and, tick that off the list.
Well, I think we're not the only ones who feel that this is a monumental election.
For voters still making up their minds, Election Day is exactly 1 week away. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance will meet with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trade and tariffs are expected to be the focus of their conversation. Vance and his family are in the country for what's being called a mostly personal visit. But as Neha Punya reports, there's a lot at stake as New Delhi faces U.S. tariffs.
India rolling out the red carpet for J.D. Vance and his family. The USA is India's largest trading partner and exports far more to it than it imports. And last month, the Trump administration slapped tariffs of 26% against New Delhi and then suspended them for 90 days. Now India is racing to finalize a deal which Modi will discuss fast-tracking with Vance. Shruti Pandalai is a strategic affairs expert.
New Delhi trying to see how it can sort of address the issue of tariff relief and economic stability. So negotiating exemptions and reductions to the paused but looming 26% US tariffs. India will also look at sort of avoiding further economic fallout, especially for its vulnerable sectors.
The US wants India to lower tariffs and increase market access, especially for US farm exports. But this is something farmer unions are protesting. They accuse Modi of abandoning the interest of millions of farmers who make up half of India's population. But experts warn India doesn't want to enter a trade war with the US either that could lead to billions of dollars in losses. All of this as the US-China trade war intensifies. Neha Punya for CBC News, New Delhi.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. There is more on the life and death of Pope Francis at cbcnews.ca, one of the most read stories on our main page. Stay with CBC for the latest news throughout the morning and the day. I'm Marcia Young.